Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. We're back from the weekend, and you may have noticed that Federico joined you on Sunday. Just our little bit of a measure to give you a little bit more each weekend. We've got a lot more coming this week, but before I get to that, I've got my friend Niko Maldonado.
Good to be here.
Joining us from the Watch You Want sales team. Niko is actually going to be helping us with our latest installment of This or That, and he's got an impressive collection of high horology stuff from the top shelf to share with you. But since we do like to give you what you want, and you asked for something over the weekend, Federico obliged, I'm going to do my bit by bringing back the wrist reviews. We are working on the channel. We have the videos ready. We're going to be launching sometime in the next 48 hours. So guys, just give us time to get the last details dotted, crossed, you name it. We want it to look right when it launches and be as much fun or more than it was in the past. So wrist reviews are back. First and foremost, luxury watch showcases, comparisons, and Niko's This or That watches. Niko, you're the co-pilot tonight. We're playing This or That. You have 3 watches you like. Walk me through your decision process if you were to decide from amongst the Patek Philippe 5396G, the Rolex Sky Dweller 326-139 white gold, and the Vacheron Constantin Overseas on a bracelet black dial.
Yeah, I mean, when Tim came to me about the show tonight, he basically said, pick your 3 dream watches. And so I tried to go into our inventory and, pick out some things that I thought were really going to stand out and that I would take absolute pride in having in my collection. You guys know that I preach dress watches, so I started with the 5396. An absolutely incredible watch in white gold. I love the moon phase on this watch, and it's just an absolute perfect under-the-cuff timepiece. So that's number 1 for me out of the 3 that I would probably choose. Sky Dweller is probably running a close second. This is something that I'll give over to Tim here so he can show you guys a close-up on the macro. You know, in white gold, we obviously saw at Basel this year the release of the
mostly steel reference.
Of the mostly steel, right? That's going to be interesting to see, but the white gold for me, absolutely top-notch. Really hefty feel at the top of the wrist, which I like. The presence is awesome, especially on a strap. You know, it really gives it, the feel of the white gold on top.
Yeah, I think that particular watch is overwhelmed in full white gold. That watch on a bracelet goes from being kind of a rich treat to just way, way, way too much. So I like that particular model that came out in 2015. By the way, guys, I didn't say he had to pick 3 watches that we've got in here tonight. That's just fortunate. And actually, the last of the 3 is a watch that one of our viewers also asked about, and that's going to be the segue to the next question. But Niko, walk me through the logic behind your choice of this Overseas as one of our contenders. Overseas Chrono.
It's one of the pieces that when I get asked about it, I say that it is the definition of crossover between sport and dress. You know, it's something that with a hefty bracelet is a really, really substantial piece. With something like that they personally, I think they have the best design bracelet in the business. Obviously, the debate upstairs is white, blue, or black dial. I'm a huge fan of the black dial. I know that our head of sales loves the blue. Some guys love the white. But for me, that piece is the ultimate in what you're looking for in an all-around piece.
So, Niko, these are all pretty cool pieces, I got to admit.
Sure.
For me, I'm a big fan of the 5396. If it were a black dial, for me, it would be perfect. Mm-hmm. Of the watches that you've got here, I have to really say I kind of dig the Overseas just because the Sky Dweller, as much as I love the black dial, black strap, white metal combination, is just too big. It's a 42, but it's a 42 that wears like a 44, 45. I like the 5396, but the combination of the white metal and the silver dial to me is just a little too cool. I like something to add some warmth, and to me a black dial adds intensity. And so the Vacheron of your 3 would probably be my pick, but we're at opposite ends of the spectrum on that.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and all of them have their merits, and I would agree that the Rolex does wear very big. I don't wear anything even near that big on a daily basis. The Patek I would love in a black dial too. Definitely not arguing that. And the Vacheron, I could see how that could be somebody's top choice, but all 3 have their merits and all 3 incredible pieces.
Yeah, very nice pieces. I have to say that you picked 3 interesting watches, and I expected you to draw something like a JLC Reverso.
We didn't have any. I really wanted to, and I love the Grand Tie.
Of course, and he has worn mine on occasions. I trust this guy with my watches. You should trust him with anything else. But jumping from Niko's choices, through the this or that gauntlet to a question asked by our viewer Steve E. Now Steve said, I tried on and really fell for the Vacheron Constantin Overseas chrono on the bracelet, the 49-150 with the black dial, but he also likes the Glasuta original 70s chrono that came out in 2014 on a bracelet with a blue dial. And this is very close to the tension among the Vacheron models because they also have a blue dial bracelet version. But his question is not so much between variants of these two watches as between the two models themselves. If you were to pick just one, he said both spoke to him, but he was wondering about our opinion regarding which is a better bang for the buck. So this is what I would say. I would say there's bang for the buck, and then there's outright desirability. So let me kind of roll through what each one offers. Now, the VC Overseas chronograph, and we've actually got the model on the table tonight, is definitely bigger. It's definitely bolder. It's a little bit closer, although it's a 42 mil, it wears like a 43, 44. It's a big watch, and on a bracelet, that goes double. So I feel like it's almost like Vacheron Constantin's sideways glance at the Royal Oak Offshore. It's definitely bigger on the wrist than the Glasuta, even when the Glasuta is on the bracelet. It's also a lot more expensive. If you're talking bang for the buck, this is $21,000 versus about $16,500 for the Glasuta on the bracelet. Its advantages are it's more water resistant, 150 meters versus 100. It does have the vertical clutch versus a sliding pinion, which is going to create a little bit of play in the hands in the case of the Glasuta. And the Vacheron definitely has better dial loom as a sports watch. It's also a little bit more anti-magnetic. So I would also say that the way the Vacheron is put together, its case profile, and we've got a graphic, but I could just as easily show you in person since I've got the watch. Its case profile, the way the bezel is built up and finished with differential polish and differential satination on top of the case, to me is just a bit more nuanced than the way the Glasuta is put together. There's no question that the Vacheron has more hand labor invested in the case and the bracelet than the Glasuta. Here's the case for the 70s chrono. Now, the 70s chrono is a newer watch design. This Generation 2 Overseas came out in 2004. The Glasuta 70s chronograph panorama date came out in 2014. Huge time delta there. So what was gained? Well, the caliber 3702 in the Glasuta is just more advanced in every way. With the exception of the vertical clutch, which it doesn't have, it has a longer power reserve. 40 hours for the Overseas, 70 plus for the Glasuta. It has a display case back so you can actually see that for which you've paid. It's enabled with a hacking function so you can stop the seconds and synchronize. There is no stop seconds on the Frederic Piguet 1185 based Vacheron 1137 caliber. They're both automatic, but in the case of the Glasuta, you're getting a free-sprung index, so it's a little bit more resistant to shock-induced timing deviation. Plus, the Glasuta comes with a flyback function as standard. Add quick set. They both have quick set for the date, but to me, the Glasuta is maybe the intellectual choice and definitely your bang for the buck winner. The Vacheron, I think, is more emotional, and you could speak to that better than I could, Niko.
And that's all I was thinking the entire time you were kind of going through that is basically, you know, I love everything that the Geo has to offer, and I'm a huge fan of Geo. I preach it a lot of the times, but it's just one of those things where, you know, head to head, it just doesn't matter because one of them is the black dial Vacheron Overseas, and the other one isn't, and that's just the way that I look at it. You know?
Yeah, there's no question that the Glasuta has a movement that's, 20 years removed from the debut of the 1185 in the Vacheron. But when you're buying the Vacheron, you're buying the look, the feel, and the persona of the watch, and you're getting a legit high horology movement in there. The caliber 1137 is beautifully made, and if you were to open the watch, it would not betray any signs of cost cutting. Glasuta has opened up the back of the case to show off their movement, but you can see when you look at it, it's mostly industrial finish with some hand interventions, but you're not talking about Patek in one case and like Omega in the other. Both of them have fairly similar finishing. The difference is gonna be the persona of the watch, and I feel like the black dial Vacheron, like Niko says, just has a gorgeous quality to it. The texture of the dial, it's a hobnail guilloche versus the sunburst of the Glasuta. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus. But they're just completely different character. And yeah, you get a higher beat rate with the Glasuta, longer power reserve, the flyback function, and even a power reserve scale. But is that really going to make up if you don't feel in your heart that you've chosen the right watch, I say go with your emotions. Niko, you're saying the Vacheron's the emotional choice.
It really is. I mean, it's something to where that bracelet is unmistakable. And so is the dial, so are the pushers. I mean, it's just the one watch out of, even maybe out of my three, that, I just got to have at some point. And so when they go head to head, I mean, the Geo's a great watch. Everything you pointed out about the watch is fantastic. But head to head, there just isn't a comparison because of the aura that goes around this Vacheron.
I mean, I love Geo. It's an emotional brand, but and I don't want to oversimplify. Maybe the comparison between trying to make the case for a movement versus an entire watch that works as a whole is almost like saying, well, the Sony Abo is a great dog, and by every measure, it's better than my pug. But my pug is fat, and he's furry, and he's fun, and he does stupid things, and ultimately, Abo might be a better dog, but the pug is more fun. So here's my crazy, I'm drawing parallels between dogs, robots, and watches now. We give you a little of everything on this show. Okay, so jumping forward, Niko, we've got a couple of questions coming through in the chat box, and I want to update our viewers. Federico of Federico Talks Watches, and my colleague here in this department, is talking watches in the chat box. So you can ask any question during the broadcast, and he'll answer it. And then, even as we're rolling through our talking points, he's carrying on a live chat. He doesn't do live shows, so if you want to get him live, you got him in our chat box. So Niko, questions about cushion-cased watches. Now, they're kind of a vintage thing. Scott M. is searching around the web. He said he found the Laurent Ferrier Gallet Square Vintage Limited Edition. Now, this is a $42,000 watch, so it's not on his radar, but he loves the look of it. Tell us a little bit about some of the models that Scott was considering as more accessible alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he was thinking the Hamilton Jazzmaster cushion, which, Hamilton, for me, has always been a great way to access an automatic movement for a really economical price.
Yeah,
even new. I mean, a lot of the stuff that they put out, I'm a big fan of. I love the khaki. A few of them that they put out are great choices. I don't see why he wouldn't go with a watch like that for sure.
At about $900, the Hamilton's very accessible, and like Niko mentioned, you're getting an automatic caliber, a real ETA 2824. It's not a Sellita, it's not a Chinese movement, it's not some Valenvar or STP thing from the Fossil Group. So for less than $1,000, that's a compelling alternative if you just want the look of the Gallet Square Vintage. Now, some of the other watches that he mentioned were vintage tributes that perhaps were more literally inspired by past production of Longines and Tag. What was he thinking along those lines?
I mean, I think that he was talking about the Monza.
Yeah,
the
Tag Monza.
Right, and for me, Tag's retails are a little bit out of whack.
Okay.
I mean, I think that pre-owned, you can get some into great prices. I think we even have one of the Monzas right now in gold that we're asking under $5.
One of the older variants.
Right, one of the older variants of the watch. But I mean, there are so many out there that it really becomes a fantastic piece to get pre-owned.
I mean, Tag last year they reissued the the black Monzas, and they're fantastic watches. But at $5,200, I think that's where Niko's questioning the economic logic. And I would kind of echo that. Again, I'm the pre-owned watch guy, so naturally you're going to suspect my motivations. But I'm about to roll out a whole bunch of watches we don't have in stock as alternatives. So hopefully the two sides of the scale balance out. I do like the 2016 Monza, but Scott asked, for under $5,000, what are my alternatives? I'd like to say he should consider, especially if he loves that 30s vibe from the Longines and Hamilton, then he's going to love the Monza CR 5112, which is a weird combination of like an old cathedral hand 30s cushion case and the 1970s Monza chronograph profile. What makes this one really cool, in addition to having like a vintage vibe from two different eras, is that it's also got an El Primero caliber in it, known as the Caliber 36 in Tag speak. This is a watch you can get for under $4,000 that ticks all the boxes that Scott says he likes in a cushion profile watch, but again, even less than the current Tag Monza black re-edition. And I would also say that in general, for cushion-shaped watches, the 1970s are your friend, Scott. Watches in that style were everywhere during the 70s, and you've got your pick of the litter. I would say that you should consider Omega Constellation C case, something like the reference 168019, which you'll be able to pick up for hundreds, not thousands of dollars, and you're getting a chronometer. And it's a legit Omega that's going to look great on your wrist, be infinitely serviceable, and last forever. But if you want something that's maybe a little bit farther off the beaten path, there's a couple of JLC references I had in mind. Niko, tell me, what are those JLC references? Because I know we were discussing this earlier.
Yeah, I think that one of them that you said was the E876.
Yeah.
But the other two I can't bring to mind. But I saw where your point was on getting to these watches, because for the price range under where he was looking to be, functionality of what he was looking for, one of them I thought was a really good choice.
Yeah, I mean, if you want complications and you want high horology and you don't want to buy like a new watch that's sub $4,000, you can buy a watch that would have been considered fairly deluxe in the 70s with the Jaeger-LeCoultre E876. And then the E872, E871 pair. Both of these watches can be had, and I've seen them for under $4,000, but also for under $3,000 in some cases. They have the cushion case that's got loves, but you're also getting an alarm. You're getting a date. And I think just based on their style, the E876 is probably closer to the profile that he likes in the 1930s inspired watches. The other two are very 70s. But all these watches for under $4,000 certainly. And I'll say that even the recent Omega Speedmaster Mark II re-edition, if he wants a more 70s cushion profile that's more overtly sporting, is a great absolve to the Monza, and you can get those for under $4,000 all day long online.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, in all those cases, guys, I don't have one to sell you, so I absolve myself of my earlier salesmanship. So Niko, question coming in from Bob B. This is, given the tested durability of the Speedmaster Pro, Speedmaster Professional, used by NASA,
Sure.
spacewalks, Apollo, you name it, to this day, he's asking me, do I think it would be fine for occasional biking, recreational, not long distance, or should he just avoid mechanicals altogether and grab a G-Shock? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, we've had this discussion, not just on the show, but off the show many times about your old Omega and how you put it through the ringer and tested it on mountain biking rides and whatnot. And, I mean, I think that, is it something that I would outwardly just go and try to do every day?
Yeah.
No. But can it handle it every once in a while? Sure. So, it's one of those things that, I mean, yes, but I wouldn't jump all the way to a G-Shock.
I would say, Bob, if you're going to ride recreationally on something with like a flat bar and you're not going off-road, you're not going to hurt it just by riding. Like the vibrations you're going to experience on tarmac, even chip and seal tarmac, will not damage the movement. Caliber 1861's tough as nails. It's actually tougher than the quartz caliber that went in the X33s, the Mars watch. But here's the thing. If you ever suspect you might wipe out, that's where I would strap on a G-Shock or System 51 to the rescue. The Swatch System 51 is the mechanical that was made for cases where total loss is not out of the question. Now, if you wipe out with a Speedy Pro on your wrist, as tough as it is, all those guys on Apollo had more of a buffer between them and 4,000 degrees impact disaster than you're going to have on a bike. Frankly, you're not wearing a spacesuit, you're wearing Lycra, if you're like me, or even casual clothes. You have no protection for the watch, so if there's even a chance that a car could knock you over, that you could fall in rough weather, that you think you might have to go off-road on your bike, light fire roads and stuff, I would maybe skip a high-end watch, and that's where the Omega really starts to look like high horology relative to the G-Shock or the System 51. Here's the nice thing about G-Shocks and System 51s, though. I love to color coordinate on my bike. With those options, you're going to be able to. So you can wear a mechanical watch. If you're hell-bent on wearing a mechanical, I say System 51. If you're just doing light commuting, the Speedy Pro is going to be fine. That's not going to tax it. It's the chance of falling on the watch that worries me.
Yeah, no, I definitely could say the same thing. And it's one of those things where before I started working here, I would wear a mechanical watch playing golf. And the first time I went golfing with Mike Michaels, who's on the show as a regular, I learned that lesson pretty quickly. So, it's just something where I don't go out looking for problems. And if there's any chance, like Tim said, of falling or of doing any kind of damage structurally to it, just don't.
System 51 is your mechanical option for times when you feel like total loss is potential. Failure is not an option when you're NASA. For the rest of us, the proverbial happens. Now, Niko, we have a great question coming in from Colo, our user, who's asking about our top 3 Grail watches. He's asking both of us what our top 3 Grail watches would be. So, I mean, you've basically shown us 3 Grail watches tonight.
Right, yeah, from our inventory, what my Grail watches would be
But
if I had to
freestyle,
go.
beyond our inventory.
Well, I think they kind of know where I'm at. These would be pretty much Grail watches, but I know that they're very interested to hear yours. So even I am. I don't think I know this about Tim, and I think I know 1 or 2. But what are your top 3 Grail watches?
Okay, well, I think Grail watches should be watches that we do not have.
Sure.
So I'm going to start with that. I would say a watch I do not have that is definitely on my top 3 must-haves is the Jaeger-LeCoultre E877 Snowdrop. It's one of the precious few JLC mid-century Memovox watches from like the 50s through the 70s that actually had a name. It wasn't just nicknamed the Snowdrop, they actually stamped the back of the case with the word Snowdrop. It's a lugless watch, it's a rare watch, they only made 2150, so 2,150 between 1970 and 75. The watch is very 70s, so 70s in fact that it's not cushion shaped, it's literally a circle, like a hockey puck. And if you want to know what the dial of this watch looks like, it was actually the model for the dial of the 2016 Jaeger-LeCoultre Boutique Blue Memovox Special Edition. The rest of the case wasn't copied over from the Snowdrop, but the dial was. That watch I will own. I broke my own heart last year when I forgot to participate in an auction where one went for below the low estimate in Knightsbridge, England, and anyway, the watch sold for I think $3,100. So it's not a super expensive watch.
Well, it doesn't have to be. That's the beautiful thing about watches is that even people that contact me and just ask opinions about stuff that even maybe Watch You Want doesn't do, as far as a business perspective is concerned. The great thing about watches is that it's all about how you perceive them and what beauty you find in them. So regardless of cost, anything can be a Grail.
Yeah, age, condition, and scarcity rather than price have made this watch elusive to me. Now, other Grails, the JLC reference, I would say it's I'm going to say 2721. It's considered to be a very large watch by the standards of the late 1940s at 36 millimeters, with teardrop lugs in stainless steel, a black dial, and hand-painted radium Arabic numerals. This is the JLC, a triple calendar watch, straight out of heaven. This is a gorgeous watch, fires on all cylinders, a great vintage reference, a great JLC calendar watch, a rare watch. Frankly, I've never seen one in the flesh, and it's just as, if not more, difficult to obtain this watch than the E877. This is a watch that would probably sell for between $10,000 and $15,000, just for reference. And then my final Grail watch is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Grand Tie Case Reverso Repetition from 1994. Now we're getting more into the realm of, Grail pricing, but still, I feel for around, it's probably about $25,000 to $35,000 for a minute repeater from a high horology house designed by Eric Coudray, who later went on to design the Gyro Tourbillon and now is a partner and lead watchmaker for Cabistan. That's a historically significant watch, both in terms of Swiss high horology because of who Eric Coudray is, and in the history of JLC when the company was kind of relearning complications and trying to make a statement. They made 500 of them, so it's not rare for what it is. It's probably the most numerous minute repeater of the first half of the 90s if they actually made all 500. But to me, it's the perfect case, the perfect size, the perfect pedigree history. And it's a complication I don't own. So that would be my third and highest Grail watch.
Well, there you go. Now we know. I mean, I think we got some interesting questions coming in from Mocal. What was it that he said?
Okay, saying, after hearing Tim talk about JLC all the time, I started looking for master compressors. There's only one left with a ceramic case. How come they were discontinued? Did they fail to sell? They didn't really fail to sell, and they're still out there. They're still in the JLC catalog. The main thing is just that the company has taken a dramatic leap away from eclecticism. When Jerome Lambert, the CEO from about 2000, I want to say he was like CEO from about 2001 to 2013, when he left the company started becoming much more conservative about the models it developed, and we started to see the sporting references pared down in favor of vintage tribute watches. You'll note that as the master compressors were phased out, the geophysic line was phased in. We also saw a re-emphasis on the Reverso for the 85th anniversary last year, which just makes sense, and also a refocusing this year on the master line, especially the sector dials in steel. So they sold well, and they were great watches, and when we have them, they move quickly, but I think it was just a changing of the guard in management at Jaeger-LeCoultre, and the people who were planning the products had a different idea for the direction of the company. So there are still a lot of great references out there, and I own some models from the master compressor lines. A lot of people, including the designer of the watch, a young lady named Magali Metroyer, who was the leader of JLC men's watch design for about 10 years, she said that the master compressor chronograph was her favorite of all the watches she designed for the manufacturer during that period, and that includes everything from the men's master watches to the Extreme Labs. So that was her pick. So they're definitely watches with a fan base. And Niko, you know that they sell, especially in steel. It's just the current version of JLC is moving in a different direction.
Yeah, and I could totally agree with that. I mean, I've been a fan of that case for a while. I know that you, like you said, I have a couple from the line. And when they do come in, they really are fast movers. We have people either waiting for them or people that have been searching and finally come across our page. So, I mean, I think it's something that they'll probably get back into, in the years to come. Hopefully they will, but I definitely acknowledge the move towards Reverso and towards other things that they did with the new,
The talk has been that they're going to have some sort of sporty reference in the second half of this year. Not necessarily a dive type watch, but they understand that the deep seas can't do it all by themselves, and they are down to one master compressor ceramic chronograph that, in its two variations, titanium ceramic and rose gold ceramic, probably can't carry the banner forever. We don't necessarily need to jump back to the day when they were doing stuff like this. I've got one of the master compressor diving Pro Geographics right here. This is a watch that, from one side of the case to the other, because of the depth gauge, measures 52 millimeters. This is a monster, and this is crazy. It works on Federico's wrist, no one else's. I don't necessarily think they're going to go back to that kind of sports watch, but I do think you're going to see some things you'll like over the next 12 months through the next cycle of SIHH and mid-year debuts. And again, I am kind of sworn to secrecy on some counts. That's one of the privileges that comes from being inside the family. But in the meantime, questions coming, and guys giving us shout-outs from all over the world. Juan from Argentina is giving us greetings. Greetings, Juan. Also, our friend from Russia is joining in. Questions coming across, Niko. Okay. Here's a question. Niko, let me know if you've heard anything along these lines. Have you ever heard of a watch brand and a university teaming up? I can't say I've ever heard of anything like this.
Not in any sense of any kind of true horology piece. I mean, you of course see the cheap watches that are just little electrical movements that are battery powered with a co-brand. But I would love to see something like that. Maybe an alma mater go with. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
that would be cool.
Something beyond like the fossil price range.
Sure.
I've never seen anything like that, but I really like the idea, and I almost feel like if you waited for homecoming at Harvard or MIT with boxes full of $10,000 watches with school colors or team logos.
Why not?
I feel like you'd sell them hand over fist. All those guys returning from hedge funds in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. But next time I go back to my alma mater, and I haven't been there since I graduated in 2006, I'll see if they even have something like a little electronic, Nixon or Fossil style co-branded watch. But
it's funny because they mentioned exactly what I was thinking of. Was we already saw Domino's with Rolex, and
right.
It looks like who was the viewer that said that 089M01. That it's funny because that was the exact thing that came to my thought, and we've had that watch twice in my tenure here.
Oh my gosh, the Domino's thing is probably the longest running co-branded Rolex dial. First of all, Rolex makes that dial, and they make the bracelet on the version that has the Domino's logo on the bracelet itself. I wonder what the new ones are going to look like now that they're no longer Domino's Pizza. They dropped the pizza, they're just Domino's.
I can't wait for the new release.
Get with the program, Rolex.
But I saw another question specifically directed to you.
Yeah.
That was, Tim, how many watches do you have, and how many watches is too many watches? I'll address the second part. There are never too many watches, as long as they are within your budget. But I'll let Tim take the first part.
I mean, yeah, Niko's actually kind of right. There's no such thing as too many watches unless you feel like you're not getting a chance to wear them. Like if you want to wear them and you just find you can't work them into your rotation, that would be too many. I would say when you're at the point that the watches are imposing on you like sacrifices in your lifestyle that you're not willing to make. For instance, kids not going to college on account of watches. That's a problem I don't have to deal with, so I don't really worry about it. So practically speaking, I would say just too many watches to wear. I will rotate through watches in the course of a day. I will wear 3 watches in the course of one day. I have 8 Jaeger-LeCoultre watches, and I feel like I have room in my collection for 2 more before I have to take a breather and really take a look at the roadmap that I created over the last 6 years.
Sure.
And ask what my next waypoints are going to be. Because once I'm done collecting I'm really into the brand. So once I'm done with JLC watches, I'm very serious about adding my own Atmos, adding some tachometers or speedometers from Ferrari and vintage Jaguar, some actual Jaeger dashboard instruments. I'm totally into the idea of finding a Jaeger-LeCoultre compass camera. They made an ultra compact camera about the size of a deck of playing cards during the late 30s, early 40s. And of course they also made a couple of Jaeger branded dive watches out of their Paris factory that were really, really cool. It was actually just outside Paris. But there's a lot of stuff beyond just the watches that I have an interest in, and that'll be my next step. I'll feel like I have enough watches when I've gotten to the point where I can consider buying those other JLC, Jaeger, and LeCoultre paraphernalia. So yeah, basically you have too many watches when you don't get to wear them and enjoy them. So questions coming through. What's our opinion of late 80s, early 90s AP dress watches like the Date 8 Moon Phase, Perpetual Calendar Royal Oaks, Perpetual Calendar round cases?
We had the what was that one called? The owl, wasn't it? The yellow gold.
Yeah, when you have a Royal Oak and it's a Date 8 known as the owl with the horizontally opposed registers.
Right, you remember the vintage one that we had that was, I think it was a mid-80s piece. I loved that piece. It was a 36 millimeter, I think it was. Solid gold bracelet, and it was a mixed emotion upstairs with the sales guys, but I remember bringing that watch in and just absolutely falling in love with it on the wrist. I think we ended up selling it for somewhere in like the realm of like 12 or 13,000, And for me, I think that the vintage pieces are awesome from them. They really are.
Yeah, I have to say, I love what Audemars Piguet did during the 80s because they were one of the few shops that never stopped doing mechanical complications. I want to say it's like the 25548, I think, was their 1978 to early 90s like statement watch. There was a wait list for it, precious metals only, 36 millimeters, round case, perpetual calendar moon phase. Just a tremendous reference with a great history behind it, and really the bridge from the 70s to the 90s for Audemars Piguet, from what they were as a luxury manufacturer to being one of the true high horology survivors in the emergence from the quartz crisis. I'll also say that there's an AP that if you're willing to look to the mid to late 90s, you may want to consider, because the reference, I want to say it's the 25920, was a 36 millimeter automatic Royal Oak annual calendar that is not commonly seen. And a lot of people don't know that there was an annual calendar Royal Oak, but there was, and it was a very wearable 36 millimeter case. So I love what AP did during the 80s. I especially love the Tourbillon Automatique, the very first automatic wristwatch tourbillon ever that came out from Audemars Piguet in 1986. To me, that is the 1980s Audemars Piguet to collect. That is the one that you want to own for the pleasure of having something unique and historically important, and because someday collectors will discover it. So, Niko, let me ask, if you were to put together a 3-watch collection, now I'm not going to ask you to pick one of three watches. We played this or that. What three watch collection would you consider essential?
Essential.
Yeah, like a watch for every purpose.
For the overall collector, not for my own personal preference.
No, I want your personal preference.
Okay.
It could be a sports watch, a dress watch, and a vintage watch, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, the one watch, like we said earlier, it doesn't have to regard pricing. It could be attainable pieces. The one thing that I've always loved and that I should pick up but still have yet to pick up is the Zenith Hennessy dial.
Okay.
I love that watch. It's, to me, you can pick it up for $3 or $4 if not a little bit less, and it's just timeless. I think that it's a beautiful dial. I love that co-brand. I believe Hennessy has something where they have a specific box set to go with it, and a bottle of whiskey that I'm sorry, not whiskey, but cognac, right?
Sorry, Midwesterner here. It's whiskey, bourbon, or nothing.
Sorry, but anyway, they have I'm sure I'm going to catch heck for that one after the show. But anyway, they have a specific bottle that goes with that watch as well, which is really fantastic and just overall great looking watch. Another one would be the Le Petit Prince from IWC.
Okay.
There's a couple of versions of that watch that I absolutely love. Going from the low retail version in the blue dial, which retails for I think $4,000.
Yeah, you can get a Mark 18.
Right, the Mark 18 is a fantastic watch, all the way up to the gold pieces. That entire line of IWC watches are just to die for. So that's something that anything within that spectrum I would take.
Okay.
I have to include Jaeger-LeCoultre Ultra in my collection. We had a Jaeger that I fell in love with recently, which was the Sun Moon Reverso, which is a little bit large for my taste, but an absolutely astonishing watch. If I had to go middle of the road, something that was still had the functionality and had the complication of a moon phase, and for an economical price, I'd probably go with that watch because it's big enough to make a statement, and it's not so small that people go, I couldn't wear a Jaeger like that. So that would probably be the three watches that I would put together to make myself feel complete with my collection.
I think if I had to just pare down to three from my own collection, I would say, unfortunately, there's one kind of area that I would feel as though I had never fulfilled, which was the lack of a true JLC vintage piece. So I'm going to say if I were to go down to just three, I would get that E877 Snowdrop with the black dial, and I would combine it with my Reverso Tourbillon, which I love unreasonably, and I would probably add, I would probably take my Master Grand Memovox over the Duomet. I would probably take it over the Duomet.
That's
because
surprising.
Yeah, the watch is spectacular. The sunburst dial, the moon phase, perpetual calendar, the bronze gong alarm. It's a watch that of all the JLCs I own, I've worn the most. So on that basis alone, I think it gets the nod over the Duomet. And that's tough to do, because if I could only keep three out of my collection as it currently stands, it would be the Duomet, the Grand Memovox, and the Tourbillon. I mean, honestly, those are probably, to me, the three most exciting watches. But I have a question from Bob Schaff, who's watching and asks, what do I think of the JLC Grand Reveil? Now, the Grand Reveil, Niko, is a watch that in platinum form, I call the Platinum Potato, because it came out in 1989, and it was supposed to be a big statement watch from JLC. They were coming off the era of the Lyre, of the Odysseus series, and they had a little bit of, not so much traditional as serious quirktastic sensibility to their styling direction. And so they're like, we're going to combine a perpetual calendar. They had the perpetual module, the Kurt Kloss from IWC. They had a Memovox base caliber. So we're going to combine the perpetual calendar with a Memovox in a precious metal case. And because they used a screw-down pusher rather than a dimple corrector to adjust the perpetual calendar, they wound up with a watch that had the two Memovox knobs, the crowns on one side, with an additional one down at about 8 o'clock. And it wound up looking like a potato with eyes growing out of it. That's why I call it the Platinum Potato in its platinum form. In gold, again, it's not a huge watch, but somehow it looks enormous. It's about 39 millimeters. It winds up looking the size of the sun because it's so odd. It's a JLC nerd watch. People are always impressed by these. When you see them in person, hugely impressive. They have incredible detail. They have an awesome lacquered dial and a wonderfully complex fluted case, but it's almost too much. It's like my Grand Memovox uses the same movement, but in a case that doesn't look like a mutated JLC Odysseus. So I love that watch, but it's always ever, the Grand Reveil of 1989 to 96 is always ever going to be a JLC connoisseur's timepiece for those with an offbeat sense of style and a little bit of a willingness to laugh at themselves. So that's my feeling about that weird one. So more questions coming in.
I like what Paul said. He's like, I'd like a platinum potato. I think we all would. That's awesome.
It is very, very much a platinum potato. So just philosophically, for a Patek Philippe 5205, do you just by default go with the gray dial? Or, I mean, with the black gray dial? It's kind of a gradient.
It really is. I mean, that's one of those things to where, Patek is not really a forte of mine as far as a brand that I really follow actively, but I have seen that dial, and for me, it's so close, and it's something that I feel like if you don't go with that black, that you're just going to regret it.
Okay, here's the thing. Here's how I am. I love watches that are white metal with a black dial, so I would actually go... I like the fact you can get this watch with a little bit of a gradient between the white metal of the case, the sort of gray or anthracite of the hour track, and the black inner dial. That's the version for me because it has a little bit of nuance. It has differential tones. It gives you the whole grayscale rather than just a stark cutoff between the white metal of the case and the black of the center dial. I know you're not really a Patek guy. I do happen to like Patek. I
love them.
I like the aperture calendars, and this is one of them. So I'm a big fan of this particular annual calendar. My preference would be to have the combination of the white metal case with the gray hour track and the black inner dial. For me, that's optimum. Now, furthermore, we have questions coming through as ever.
I saw one that I really wanted to answer, and I'm trying to find it. I'm not sure who asked, but I'm going to address the question anyway, which was, I want to get into my first Rolex. What's the best first Rolex to get?
Okay.
And whoever asked, I hope you're still watching. But
yeah, I'm sorry we can't name you by name, but we always do like to call out the names
of course.
Of people asking the questions if we can catch them. The chat box moves fast, guys.
It does. So, but I would love to address this because I've always gone through this query before too. So everybody has who owns a Rolex. So, the straightforward answer is a Submariner. The reason being is because whenever anybody thinks Rolex, they think Submariner. What I've always told collectors who are coming to me for their second and third Rolexes, what I always say is, well, if you already had, let's say that their first one was a Datejust, which is another fantastic choice for a first watch. Kind of not basic, but beautiful watch nonetheless, and something that's well known. I will then venture into an Explorer 2, a Yachtmaster, something along the lines of that, down the road. I would have to say, though, as a first choice, keeping it as economical as possible. I think you said your other watches were an Oris and an Omega. A Submariner is a great choice, very versatile, black on black. Or you could get into something like the BL&R, which is the Batman black and blue. But the Datejust 2 are two also fantastic choices for first-time Rolexes.
Now, we have a question that's coming in from Dimitri, who's asking me, because apparently a dealer told him that the 39mm Rolex Oyster Perpetual is an El Cheapo Rolex.
What?
First of all,
that's absurd.
If a dealer used that kind of language to describe a multi-$1,000 watch to me, I would basically walk out and take my business elsewhere. That's a lot of money to spend on a watch.
There's no way that an authorized dealer said that to him.
I'm hoping it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping it wasn't an authorized dealer. And I see that the end of that question is, should I avoid? Yeah, anybody that uses the term El Cheapo.
He's asking, should he avoid the watch? But I think unintentionally, the answer he's going to get is avoid the dealer.
Avoid the dealer, yeah. I mean, anybody that says about any watch, it's El Cheapo. I mean, when we talk poorly about a watch, we talk about what attributes we don't like.
Yeah.
Don't generalize an entire watch. I wouldn't like that, and I'd be adamant about it while I was there.
If you're looking to spend thousands of dollars with someone and you have an interest in the 39mm, I want to say it's the 114-300, that's a gorgeous watch, and I love the color options that you get with the dial. It's beautifully made. And while some aspects of the interior of the clasp aren't finished quite the same way you'd see on like a Sea Dweller or a Daytona, the bottom line is you're still getting a Rolex movement of the same quality that goes into any three-hand Rolex watch.
100%.
You're getting the same Rolex precision. You're getting the same 904L steel. You're getting a beautifully made dial, indices, hands, made in-house. This is a great watch and an heirloom quality product. The only time I would use the word El Cheapo to describe a watch is if it were quite literally disposable. Like, I've got my... I'm gonna do a little bit of prop work here, but I've got my $70 Swatch Blue Rebel here. This is an El Cheapo. This is $70. That's reasonable to call cheapo. I would never refer to someone's... I mean, this could be someone's dream watch, a 39mm Oyster Perpetual. It's also the most direct descendant of the original Rolex Bubbleback, the automatic Oyster Perpetuals of the 1930s. I mean, this is as core as Rolex gets. This is a purist's watch and an expensive investment. So don't go around letting people talk you out of watches because they badmouth it on the basis of price. We will be honest. A $30,000 watch does make a $4,000 watch or a $5,000 watch look affordable, but everything stands on its own merits. And the 39mm Oyster Perpetual has a lot to stand on in terms of quality.
Of course it does. And Dimitri, coming from the sales side, I would never use language like that on any brand that we represent or that we do business on. I mean, unless this guy was trying to upsell you into something that was 3-4 times the price and he decided to say something like that, regardless, that's not a dealer I'm going to again, AD or not.
Yeah, and you want to work with a dealer that'll first of all show respect to you. And if you can't cross that threshold, take your business elsewhere. We don't sell any new Rolexes here, so it's not like we're going to get any of that business. I just say go where you feel comfortable and happy and respected, where people can talk to you about the merits of a product rather than trying to slide it away so that you go for something higher end.
Of course.
Honesty comes first with luxury.
And we've talked about grail watches and how I know that I've done business with people who have bought Omega Seamasters or, something in the under $5,000 range. And they go, you know what, today I'm getting my grail watch. To me, this is my grail watch. And you know what, good for you. Because that's how you deserve to be able to handle the watch you're getting. Regardless of whether he thinks you should get into something more expensive, that watch especially has everything to go on. I mean, you can obviously tell we're emotional about it.
Yeah.
It's just not cool, and I wouldn't go back there at all.
First, I want to say, Jeremy Lon, I will go over the calendar complications. We're going to lead off our next episode with those, but today we've got to close, and I think I'll just close on this note. In 2007, I bought myself my first, what I felt was collectible high-end watch. I paid $400 for a 1974 caliber 214 Bulova Accutron, gold-plated. It was about as low-end as vintage watches get. I skipped out the door of that family jeweler walking on air. To me, that felt like a Patek Philippe grand complication. I loved it, and that's all that mattered. And that's all that should matter to you guys. I'm Tim. He's Niko. He's Federico. She's Faylene. This is What You Want, and thanks for logging on.